Good evening, and we're going to continue this evening talking about the problems of the aerial toll house cult within the Orthodox Church. And we're going to have quite a lengthy series on it, not every night and not with every broadcast, but we're going to explore it in great depth and great detail. And I want to preface this evening, before we really begin to go into it, that one of the great problems with the aerial toll house or astral plane teaching is that it creates a heresy about anthropology, about our understanding of man and the nature of man. And when we read the Holy Fathers who wrote against Manichaeism, we find exactly this problem being addressed by them. And that is a radical dualism, that is to say that there's a radical separation, or that man is really split between soul and body. Not that man is soul and body, which is of course the truth, but that he's split between the two, and that the body is somehow an enemy of the soul, and that the soul is liberated from the body at death, and that the Holy Fathers, as we shall see as we proceed, have told us that the soul cannot be judged or awarded either punishment or paradise until the resurrection and without the body. That the so-called partial judgment is nothing more than the nous, that is the intellect which is in the soul, becoming aware of its relationship with God. And it's that simple awareness that constitutes the so-called partial judgment when the soul departs from the body. And we'll discuss this at some length, and we'll go into the Holy Fathers and invite you to look at them yourself. We're sometimes told that demons try to intimidate the soul at the time of death, that they try to frighten it or terrify the soul. Nowhere in the actual Holy Fathers of the Church are we ever told that the demons are able to usurp the authority of Christ and judge the soul, or that the soul should have to answer to demons for its sins. There is such a system in pagan Egyptian mythology, which is probably how it began to come into the Christian church in Egypt. And we'll discuss that also at some length. But for now, let's look back to the year 367 AD. And in that year, Athanasius of Alexandria, that is Athanasius the Great, issued his pastoral epistle number 39 and sent it to the monasteries of Egypt. And in it he reiterated that there were 4 recognized gospel books: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But that, of course, there were several other books claiming to be gospels. And these were written by Manichaeans mostly, Gnostics anyway. And this was a great habit and a technique of Gnosticism. Mani himself had always adapted local language and produced books labeled with notable persons from any area in which he was. He would use Buddha, he would use Hindu references, and in China, the Manichaeans later also used references to Taoism and influenced Taoism, actually. In the Christian world, one of the first things they did was to create spurious gospels, and also would write books attributed to saints or even fathers of the church. And this, of course, created a problem. It created a conflict between the actual gospels, what they taught, and what was actually being taught within some of the monasteries, even the Orthodox monasteries. Because Manichaeans would purposely infiltrate Orthodox monasteries, just like the Bogomils later, outwardly confessing the Orthodox faith, but inwardly treating it as an allegory, and by stealth insinuating their secret Gnostic doctrines into the brotherhoods of monasteries and introducing these spurious writings. So in 367, in his pastoral epistle number 39, Athanasius the Great is telling the abbots of the monasteries to get these false books out of the monasteries, to destroy them. Well, it appears at that very time, when this epistle was read and published, that a group of Gnostics within these monasteries collected several of their leather-bound papyri, their codices, and lovingly placed them in a clay container, sealed it very carefully and tightly, and buried it up along the side of a cliff area, where later the village of Nag Hammadi would grow up. And it was only in the 20th century that near the village of Nag Hammadi, these codices were discovered and translated fairly late into the 20th century. And among the codices, there was a gospel according to Thomas, a gospel of truth, a gospel according to Philip, the Pistis Sophia, and several other books. And they joined a whole long list: the Gospel of Pontius Pilate, the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Joseph the Carpenter, and many, many others. And this will take us now away from Egypt for the moment and up to the area which we call the Syriac area, what the Romans called Syria Coele, in the north and the east, to the kingdom of Adiabin and the principality of Aserohin, and the cities of Edessa and Nisibis, up to the area close to the homelands of Mani, to the main place of teaching of Tatian, Bardassian, and to a place where the teachings of Marcion or Marcion were still quite strong, the stronghold of Gnosticism. And it appears that this is the area in which the Gospel of Thomas actually originated. Thomas, according to tradition, had sent Thaddeus, one of the 70, who was in the local area called Mar Adai, up to evangelize that area. And it was a successful evangelization. Edessa was converted, probably the first whole city to become Christian. And that whole area and a lot of the villages were converted. There were a lot of Jews settled there who were receptive. And it was in this area that Thomas became then very popular and very well known. And we come across the Acts of Judas Thomas, the Gospel of Thomas, and the Doctrine of Adai. Now, if any portion of these were authentic, we're not certain. They could very well all be simply spurious. Certainly the Gospel of Thomas is considered spurious by the Orthodox Church. And in this area, the struggle between Gnosticism and Orthodoxy was rather intense for most of the time. It was here also that the great church father Ephraim the Syrian, St. Abba Isaac of Nineveh, and others of the great saints were working. And when we look at the writings of these fathers, we begin to understand and see into the problems of Gnosticism and the root source of the Ariel Toll House myth.